For the latest top tips, reviews and advice, please subscribe below.
Hello and welcome to Attwoolls Outdoors with me, Mike. Today I'm giving you a bit of a review on a new tent from Outwell. So with me here today I've got the Outwell Virginia 5 Air TC. So the Virginia is essentially a new model and sits in kind of Outwell's classic air collection. So it's basically a model that's all designed to be kind of breathable fabric. So we've got a Polycotton material, or TC fabric as it's known, and it's all about kind of sort of Outwell the DNA of the workmanship, the quality, and very feature rich in there. So it's kind of almost like Outwell's flagship models. So with me here, this is obviously the Virginia. The Virginia is very different probably to what we've seen elsewhere, and it's a little bit different in terms of design. It's still a kind of a free zone tent, i.e. you have a sleeping area, a very generous living area, but also like a little kind of sheltered kind of canopy area. The difference in the setup is actually the canopy area is in the backside. Back left hand corner, you can probably just see it in the camera there, and that's kind of like your wet, dry area, so you kind of come into there before coming to your lovely living area. The joys of this kind of design is the fact that it actually gives you quite a small pitch size, so it's around 440 width by about 510 long, so it's a lot smaller than you would necessarily, it's quite boxier, but for me it's the sheer space you have in the living room is something you don't really get, certainly for something as small as compact as this, and because the tent lens is smaller, it does mean that things like the pack size and the pack weight is a little bit less in comparison to another Polycotton model. So weight wise, you're looking around about sort of 44.8 kilograms for the tent itself, which obviously is a sizable chunk, but for a Polycotton tent, it's hardly a drop of anything, especially for something that's 440 wide. That's a real generous width. Essentially, it is what it suggests is a 5 berth. Really, I'd probably put this down as a comfy kind of 4, or really an ultra comfy 3, depending on how you want to do it. I see it as working well for couples, just because of the sheer amount of space you get for living wise, and obviously a bit of sleeping as well is quite kind of a crucial point of it. So what we've got here is a Polycotton material. So it's a breathable fabric that obviously allows air to pass through the material, but it's very, very waterproof as well. The joys of the Polycotton material, because on a warmer day, it'd be a lot cooler on the inside, and on a cool day, the weave contracts and keeps the warmth in. So you get the best of both worlds. When you have that, it's a much quieter. You haven't got a sort of synthetic kind of flapping noise. And the only sort of contrast to that, and also actually fair longevity-wise, it will last you longer as well. It's a nicer fabric and to handle, and it is always my preferred choice if you're okay with obviously the extra weight, and more importantly, it takes a little bit longer to dry as well. I use the term it's a bit more kind of high maintenance, just the fact that when it's you can pack it away wet, but you want to leave it more in the bag for more than 24 hours, 48 at a push, and you want to get it back up and obviously then get air into it. And joys actually it is fully air, so it's got 3 individual valves that you obviously can inflate it, but more importantly, it's actually a single inflation point if need be. So on the side we can see here, at the bottom of each kind of beam is a valve to obviously inflate or deflate. Now there actually are bracer tubes that are interconnected with one another, so one single point, i.e. the middle point, can pump up this model quite happily. Personally, what you probably would do if you were to do that, I wouldn't want to do that with a manual pump. You could do, but it's just quite a lot to go through. So you can buy an electric pump, pop it on there, press a button, and inflate it to go as you need to. For me, I think if you're looking for an electric pump, I'd probably say probably the Dometic Gale pump is probably the best one to go for, just in terms of getting air into it, and it's the most efficient. Runs off a cigarette lighter as well. We've got these beautiful big crystal clear windows to get plenty of light into the tent, and they also are tinted, so you get an element of privacy as well. If you of course want ultimate privacy, what you can then do is actually zip them up fully, and then that keeps your sort of self nicely enclosed. This backside here, like I said, this is going to be kind of your wet dry area, so you're kind of come into here, take your shoes off, and then enter your lovely clean and carpeted kind of living section itself. Admittedly, probably it's a little bit tight in terms of actually cooking underneath it here. You probably can do, I can probably just about stand up in this section here. We'll bring the camera in here later on, so you could kind of cook. There is a door located on here as well, so when you want to zip it up, you can completely enclose it. The way Outwell kind of do the workmanship is quite a little bit different to other brands as well. Things like, for example, the guide points that go on the side, it actually sort of splits off and goes into seam 2 places. Means you've got a better and stronger structure the whole way through. It means a bit more wear and tear. It sort of distributes the kind of weight itself. Floated guide lines as well, so there's like a slightly lower point to the guide point. They kind of colour coned to match the colour of the fabric. So we've got almost like a kind of a browny kind of colour, 2-tone brown. But I think it's all done quite nice, and the detailing on things like the beading works really sharply. On the front and back of the tent, we've actually got webbing straps that are built into it. So again, you can also tension that. The difference thing again with the webbing strap itself, it not only goes to the edge but actually carries on through and then locks itself into seam. Again, it helps to distribute the weight and again means you have less strain going on one point, and these are the points that probably take the hammering more than anything. And that's the same even when you get to the side. Again, what you find is well, you've got little Velcro tabs for retainers, so when you want to put them away, you can keep the guide points nice and neatly down there. The front panel basically goes straight into the main living area, and what I do quite like that they've done about this is you've got a bit of a funkier design in terms of the way it looks with these kind of triangles. What's that actually doing is actually kind of giving you a window section and then also a mesh. So what you can do is when you have it sort of zipped up, oops, Daisy, is you've got a crystal clear window, so you get the vision on the front. Then when you want the airflow, you obviously got to drop it down to the side here. There are zips on the inside for the mesh, so you can zip those up and get that sort of fully sort of watertight. So you can do that from the inside, but then you still get the vision out. So I think for me that works really quite nicely. Got again oversized zips as well, and then we can if you want to kind of roll it up. If you wanted to, in theory, you probably could utilise this as a little bit more extra canopy. You could buy some additional king poles, bring that out, make a little bit of a canopy. You would have to kind of go through the pegging points onto the spike, so there's no eyelets that's actually built into them, but it is kind of an option you could look at. The front panels, actually with the privacy curtains, they are kind of toggle across, so they're not kind of zipped, but because they come sort of directly from the side across, they're generally not too bad to kind of do. And then you've got, again, straps to keep that neat and tidily at the top there. Cool. So, just do that from the inside. Into the front door, what you do find is there is a lip that kind of comes up and comes down. So the best part of this, for example, is that you can get obviously the complete seal on the cover. So because the front door completely zips up and zips down, you get a complete watertight seal. It means you haven't got entry passes in and out of the actual door itself. That works really quite smartly. Generally, because it zips all the way around at the front and the back, when you've got sort of the mesh open, you can have a light on at night, and you haven't got to worry about bugs coming in. So again, that's quite a nice little point. And the tinted windows gives you that, like I said, element of privacy as well. And because you've also got this kind of Gothic arch kind of pitch, you do find that it helps to give you better height, and certainly from the side walls, it works well as well. In fact, let's actually pick the camera up and get a bit of a better feel from the inside of it. So now we're inside, probably you can appreciate kind of the sheer width you've got in here. The thing like that 440 width makes it feel really quite boastful. And again, you've got additional bracer tubes running throughout the centre to give that extra structure to it itself. I think this model's been inflated for quite a while. It's been on the showroom for probably about 5-6 months now. So definitely do a little bit of edge to pump it up a bit more. But again, it's quite a closed system. So again, that a little bit of loss of air in that time, especially with kind of a heavier fabric like with Polycotton, I think that's pretty damn decent. We've got obviously sealed in ground sheet throughout the whole section itself until we get into kind of that back section, which then obviously it's more exposed grass. I believe there is a ground sheet that can supply for that section if need be as well. And then obviously, if not, when you buy the footprint, it would kind of cover into that section, and then you've got the door to seal it all up. Big crystal clear windows throughout it, so you can get plenty of light into it. It does help to make it feel a bit roomier. I appreciate with a darker fabric, it does feel a little bit darker in here than it would do, but we are inside. But even so, I still think it's not particularly too bad, and that's when you get the option of additional lighting and things like that as well. As we've got the bedroom set up, we've actually removed one of the bedrooms and rolled it down. So what you have is essentially a 3 berth here and a 2 berth here. The 3 berth is 180 wide, the 2 berth is 120. So technically it's going to be a 3 and then also a 2. What you can do is obviously zip off the bedroom essentially, roll it back, and it sort of stays in a little sausage on the bottom there, and then it becomes more of kind of an additional living area. So you can sort of sit back, relax, really relax, and then kind of incorporate that. So again, you can use it as a storage section for me. I mean, there is also um, a bedroom access point in the side point. So if you wanted to sort of seal it up and coming directly through here, you could do. But then also you've got obviously a flat entrance directly in. For me, I think you probably use it as a bedroom in general. And one thing that's quite nice about these is actually deeper than the average bedrooms, so about 230 deep. So it means when you've got things like camping and stuff, you can actually fit them in deep enough. For me, I'd probably see it as your master sort of 2 berth bedroom, and then obviously a 1 or 2 in this side. Features obviously the crucial thing kind of with Outwell and what you get. So not only do you get things like their hook track system, it's like ability for almost like a beading that runs throughout sort of each beam. You can actually have what they call the hooks. It's like almost like a clothes peg kind of thing. Clips onto there to create a hanging point for a lantern, or you can sort of span it across 2 widths and have a suspended lighting for it in it. So there's lots of different options in terms of that. Again, with like storage organisers, you can also put that directly in as well. The way the air is distributed throughout the tent, obviously you've got inflation points on the outside. If you're utilising one, then the air comes down and then distributes itself through these little tap systems itself. Admittedly, it's something actually that Outwell did use in the past, in terms of having a single inflation point. If to be honest, it wasn't particularly a great thing when it initially came out back in 2019. They've done a lot of work on it in a sense, and one of the main issues they had was essentially the tap adapters. The taps used to pop off. Now they actually have screw threads and much more thorough. Same kind of reliable hose spreads between the 2 sections, and they've got little crimp as well, so that basically isolates each beam from one another. So God forbid you did have an issue, you can basically sip it out. But that, and they've also changed the tube material, which they've ran with for a few years since then. So generally there's a lot of kind of confidence, and without when you got kind of a 2-year warranty with it anyway. So it's a lot more thorough, and I think, to be fair, they've finally done a decent job with getting over the previous hurdles that they did have with this general inflation system. The bedroom sections are a nice darker kind of fabric. They've got storage pockets built inside them, so you've got things like your keys and phones you can put out the way. There's also a pocket on the front side as well, just again to declutter the main part of the tent. And there's a cable entry point that goes directly into the bedroom, certainly the master bedroom at least anyway, and that marries up with the cable entry point on the side of the tent, which is located down the bottom here. Other key features that you have with the tent is you've got Attwell's quick and quiet bedroom system. So this is the ability of a magnetic kind of door which allows you to enter the tent without having to utilise zips. Helped if I prepped it beforehand, but here we are. So it's something that's on pretty much most of Outwell's, in fact all of Outwell's kind of tents really, so it's kind of one of their premium kind of features. So no wonder it's on their premium kind of tent. So what it allows you to do is magnets are located along the bedroom, so you can kind of come into the tent itself, and essentially the door, if I get out of the way of it, closes behind you and sort of magnetised shut. So it's a much more quicker and quieter way of getting in and out. There's also a mesh panel that's built onto the actual front of the bedroom, so you can get obviously airflow directly in and out. And actually one thing to bear in mind is the inner bedroom itself is made from a polycotton material, so it's breathable. One thing you do find with a lot of other brands is they often will use a polyester fabric for the bedroom itself. So it's a way of kind of cutting expenses, but again, with Outwell, they've not necessarily done that. And you can just toggle that door back when you don't want to utilise it, or just use it as a, because again, I suppose the thing with the quick and quiet door is you can access the tent easily without having to see the bedding and everything in there, so it's still kind of tucked away. The beading, i.e. the hook track that we've mentioned, also can double up as a lighting source. So in the corners, what you have is Outwell's kind of night light system. So it's a little kind of little casing part. You can turn it on, it illuminates then the same tracking that runs throughout it. If I'm being honest, it's a great concept, works really well. in terms of the sort of light feeling. The light you get off it isn't necessarily the best. It's not something you would be able to read by, but it's more a case of identifying. If it was dark, for example, it would kind of give you a very dull light. It's not something you could read a book by, but certainly identify where zips and things are. So I wouldn't necessarily use it as the main lighting source for the tent, but certainly it's quite a nice little thing. Something that may tweak as time goes on. But one thing you also have, it's just a nice little sort of feature really, is one thing on some of the tents they have it externally as well, but on this particular model they don't. The bedroom section, as we can see here, there's a big mesh part located directly at the back. In fact, let's bring the camera in and just get a bit up close and personal with it all. For me, I think it's a cozy feeling I do quite like about the Virginia. You can really kind of make it home from home, and like kind of we have displayed here, it works really well. You can see obviously the struts along the top there, which obviously gives it a bit additional bracing. That obviously twinned with the webbing strap, storm straps, just give it an extra bit of more bouts and braces. We've situated with kind of an extra bit of living area. You can see the door sort of mesh panels that feature into that section. That works really quite nicely as well. And we've got the rear ventilation point as well to obviously help airflow directly in the tent itself. But you can see with the bedding in place, works really nicely. There's little storage pockets located down the corner there, not only to mention the ones directly at the front, if you can see that for the darkness. And then we've got a cable entry point in there. It doesn't help being inside. Then that's the little night system, so for the main tube, and go to that point. In fact, I believe there is a night system on the outside here. No, I'm mistaken. I just saw whenever the cable ran through for it. Other things to point out, obviously, we've got the taps and how it obviously changes. That's the point there. So there's a much different way of doing it, and it's got a screw thread here, so it's much more thorough. Then we've got the hanging point for lanterns, which obviously goes onto this sort of track system. So you have little clips that go directly on. But you can see there's braced beams throughout the whole section. So again, structurally, it's quite strong. They tested up to quite vigorous sort of speeds and stuff. So they've been quite impressed in general with that. This would be kind of your kind of wet dry area. It is actually. I was right. That's the light system there. So it's actually on the door. Again, on the inner door here, so you can probably see it there. But this is going to be kind of your wet dry area. So this is where you can kind of come into, take your shoes off. You could probably attempt to do a little bit of cooking if need be out of here. But there's a door that sort of seals it all shut. There's also kind of a rear window which you can see built onto it as well. As we come around the back, you've got the big ventilation point, so that's obviously to get airflow into the main body of the tent. You can zip that completely shut if you really want to. Failing that, it will roll up to have a bit more extra light and visibility at the back of it. Always a little kickstand to bring it out, so you can still have shelter, but airflow coming into it as well. As we kind of come forward, there is an extra point on top here. Now this is to take the additional tarps that can go out to the front of it, so it gives you a bit more extra space under cover. So you have a look at those kind of canopy tarps, as they're called. So yeah, again, there's a really nice option to look at. I think on the whole, I quite like the Virginia in terms of style. Again, something a bit different to what we've seen kind of elsewhere. I think certainly the layout and being kind of very sort of living oriented, you can see how we've set it up with kind of the sofas and the chairs and stuff, and you've got low level ventilation beneath the windows as kind of zip up curtains. You can have it halfway. It feels very spacious for something that is, when you think of the look of the floor diagram, quite a compact little unit. The flexibility of the bedroom works really quite nicely, and I think for me, I see love the idea of couples probably going for something like this. And again, it's a generous tent for a couple, but still, or small families, a family of 4, for example, probably could quite happily accommodate that as well. There is a separate door section which obviously zips up here, so it keeps the outside kind of wet dry area separate to it. And again, it drops down and then obviously zips shut as well, so it does feel completely enclosed. So there's a lot of high-end features built into this tent, and obviously being a Polycotton tent and sitting kind of in Outwell's kind of flagship collection, you would expect that kind of really. And certainly when you've got, like I said, like a 2-year warranty and everything that kind of goes with it, I think it works really well. Certainly model will kind of have on display in some form. Most likely have the polyester version of this tent, which is called the Maryland. So the Maryland, you can that'll be on display in the shop. It's like a ripstock polyester 6,000 mil high head, so If you like the concept of this but want something that's more polyester fabric and a little bit more price oriented comparison to it, and like I say, it's more of a manageable fabric, being more of a kind of polyester, quicker drying, but then you lose the breathability. So it's definitely sort of pros and cons of both. But for me, I don't love the feel of the canvas being underneath it, and certainly the layout. I think the design is a bit quirky and something we've not really seen from any other brands. So I think on the whole, it's a nice model. Um, yeah, it just feels kind of homely, and certainly when we got set out like this, it just feels quite warm and inviting. So yeah, for more questions or queries, feel free to check the link below this video, take you through to our website where we've got things like sort of pack sizes, floor dimensions, individual features all spelled out for you, so you can do a lot more research and, like I said, by all means pop into shop and see it on display in some form. But I think it's quite a nice model, certainly one I do enjoy, and it's nice to be within. But of course, feel free to let us know what you think. It was always great to hear from you, be it good, bad, or indifferent. So comment in the box below. It's great to hear from you. But on the whole, that's kind of our little video review on the Outwell Virginia Air 5TC. Thank you very much for watching, and we shall see you again soon in our next Attwoolls Outdoors video review.